What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Chris Evans here with Zero Meter Chasers, live here on this Monday afternoon at 1:11 Eastern Standard Time on August 10th. Wanted to go live here on Monday afternoon as we do have an active weather pattern that looks to take shape this week. I did want to cover kind of what to expect as we get into today, and then kind of cover as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm not going to get much further than Wednesday on this video, but I did want to cover what looks to be an active weather week as we get into later this week. So as always, just want to make sure my audio is working. So if you could put a thumbs up if you're on Facebook or leave a comment in the chat, I would greatly appreciate it. Here we are looking at the Kentucky Mesonet website here. Looking at our heat indices outside, and again, you can see we looked at this yesterday, but here in the kind of the orangish color is where we have this heat advisory until August 13th, so for another 3 days, for heat indice values anywhere from 103 to 109 out here in far western Kentucky. And you can see those heat indice values already approaching 100 degrees out here near Paducah and McCracken, Graves County, basically the I-69 corridor and points off to the west. But even along the I-65 corridor here, you can see in Hardin County, we have an air temperature of 87 degrees. However, the the dew points again have been very high. We'll look at those in 1 second, but high dew points leading to heat indices already approaching 100 degrees here in Hardin County. So a very hot and humid Monday is to be expected. One more thing that you'll note is up here in far northeast Kentucky. We'll look at radar in a second, but anywhere in this pink color is where you'll see we do have a severe thunderstorm watch that is issued until 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that is for a complex of storms that's currently up here in Ohio and is pushing towards far eastern Kentucky. We also have a flood watch that was issued for the next 3 days for kind of repeated rounds of showers and storms here, especially in far northeast Kentucky. So places like Wilmington, Cincinnati, Maysville, far northeast Kentucky definitely looks like they're going to get repeated rounds of storms as we get into later this week. One more thing that I did want to look at was our dew point temperatures outside. Give me a second to find that here. There it is. When we look at our dew point values, yeah, it's disgusting, right? So dew point values, usually anytime you get dew point values over 65, it's usually pretty sticky. Anytime you get them over 70, it's very muggy outside. And we currently have dew point temperatures in the mid to upper 70s statewide across Kentucky on your Monday afternoon. And this has been a common theme. I feel like we've had the sticky and nasty weather here for the last couple of weeks, and it's just continued to stay. So we do have that nasty, humid environment today. And again, I did want to switch over to radar real quick here. Give me 1 second. Here we go. So when we look at radar here, we'll give it a second to load. Let me get it up to the latest radar. You'll see here's where that severe thunderstorm watch is in far eastern Kentucky for this complex of storms that is in Ohio currently, just south of Columbus, and is pushing out to the south. So this could clip far eastern Kentucky as we get through the afternoon. I'll kind of put it in motion here from the last hour. So here it was at about 12:23, and if we put it in motion, you can see how this is kind of moving off to the southeast. So I definitely think maybe Paintsville and Pikeville, far eastern Kentucky, could see this complex as we get into the afternoon, especially the next couple of hours. But I definitely think the rest of Kentucky is going to stay dry again as we look here and get into the afternoon today. So again, watching this complex here at 1:15 Eastern Standard Time, far southeastern Ohio, pushing into West Virginia, and this is pushing off to the southeast. Does not look to impact any of Kentucky except for far eastern Kentucky, possibly maybe like Paintsville and Pikeville, but not a widespread risk with this complex at least as we get into your afternoon on Monday. So what I wanted to do now was kind of look at some model data here as we got going. The one thing I wanted to note, I didn't mean to do that, but the one thing I wanted to note was, we've talked about how model data does not handle these summertime complexes very well. We've talked about that a lot in our videos, especially the last couple of weeks, and today's a great example of that. So here's the HRRR model that runs every hour. Right, so this was at 12Z, so a couple of hours ago, probably about 4 or 5 hours ago. But here was the simulated radar, just from this morning at 1 p.m. So for right now, and again, it did not have that complex out here just south of Columbus. Now, if we look at radar right now at 1 p.m., it looks a lot different than what the HRRR kind of suggested it would look like. So the reason I'm telling you guys this and kind of showing you guys this is because model data is not going to handle these setups perfectly. So I don't want you to kind of look at this as gospel as we get into, through this video, but I definitely think that the HRRR is handling the overall setup decently as we get into your Monday afternoon. So here's that complex, not handling it well. Could clip far eastern Kentucky, but everywhere else looks to stay dry as we get through your Monday here. We could have another complex, but we're going to be pretty worked over here. I think the HRRR is just a little bit late with this complex out here in West Virginia and Virginia. And when we look up here to a little bit farther north, you'll see up here by Chicago in northern Illinois, we're going to have another round of severe weather. For those of you that don't know or weren't watching last night, we did have a couple of tornadoes near Streator, Illinois, near Reading, Illinois, up here in far northern Illinois. Another day of tornadoes last night. Last night was a nocturnal nighttime tornado event, but it does look like this does not look like to be a widespread tornado event today, but I do think damaging winds and some hail could be expected with these storms up here near Chicago. Again, down here in Kentucky, not expected much here on our Monday, again, unless you're out here far eastern Kentucky. And then as we get into the overnight hours, you'll kind of see how the train tracks kind of setting everything from Indiana through Ohio into West Virginia. So that's kind of the train tracks from where everything's going to set up. Could set up a little bit farther east here. Cincinnati could get in play. So again, anywhere from Cincinnati to Columbus, I'll kind of draw this. This is for today. This looks to be the general storm track as we get into today and as we get into your Tuesday morning. So you'll see that kind of changes here as we get into Tuesday afternoon and again into your Wednesday. But for the rest of tonight, it definitely looks like far eastern Kentucky is going to be most at risk, and everybody else is going to stay mostly dry as we get through our Monday here. So if we fast forward this a little bit here, again, here's your timestamp. This is Tuesday at 7 a.m. So we have that complex of storms up there near Chicago, and we'll have another complex in the afternoon tomorrow. And I do think tomorrow afternoon, if we look here, this is the HRRR tomorrow at 6 p.m. Tomorrow looks really interesting, especially in Indiana and Ohio. I mean, you can see some of the damaging wind risks that the HRRR is already picking up on with some of these Boeing segments as we get to, again, 6 p.m. on your Tuesday. So we'll just have to watch and see again what radar looks like. We'll look at the SPC outlooks here in 1 second once we get through kind of the HRRR in the name here. But a complex and a complex of damaging wind gusts definitely look likely as we get into Tuesday afternoon and evening in portions of Indiana and Ohio. And again, the general flow is going to the southeast. So just tracking with this. The greatest threat as we get into Tuesday afternoon definitely looks to be somewhere in this area. I definitely think the I-75 corridor from Cincinnati to Pikeville definitely looks to be more at risk as we get into Tuesday afternoon. But I think the I-65 corridor could definitely get into some storm action. But again, we'll just have to kind of watch radar as we get into Tuesday afternoon and kind of see how it tracks as we get into the afternoon and evening hours. But I definitely think that a nasty line of storms are going to fire here Tuesday afternoon in portions of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And again, if I fast forward this, you can kind of see how everything is moving southeast. And as we get to 9 p.m. on Tuesday, we'll have an advancing line of showers and storms approaching the I-75 and I-65 corridor. So we'll have to watch these for any severe potential, especially with the timing. The HRRR has been running a little bit slow. So if it's a couple hours slow and we're moving these storms in here around 7 or 8 p.m., they might have a little bit more fuel to work with. These MCS complexes are kind of driven on Cape, so we'll have to watch. Again, I'll show you guys that instability. You guys can already feel it outside, but we have a lot of instability, right? This is the fuel ahead of this complex of storms. As we get, this is 9 p.m., so that's after the sun goes down. So as we get to 6 p.m., you can see we have plenty enough Cape to kind of fuel an MCS complex to the north. So we'll just have to get to about 6 p.m. on Tuesday, kind of see what radar looks like as we get into the evening and the overnight hours, and then we'll kind of have, again, another complex to push through. This one definitely looks to highlight more of eastern Kentucky and could even highlight the I-65 corridor. Again, we just need about maybe another 24 hours to kind of see how Tuesday night will take place. And then as we get into Wednesday, I think the HRRR doesn't get to Wednesday, but behind that, you'll see as we get into overnight Tuesday and Wednesday, more storms are likely, and they kind of just fizzle out here as we get into Wednesday morning, and then we have another round that's kind of firing here from Cincinnati to Indianapolis, and these are going to trek south as well. So it's definitely a very active weather pattern, especially as we get into Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday. I can show you guys a little bit further here. I don't want to go too far into the weeds, but the good news is that this is a different model that we look at. This is the North American model, the NAM. And this is the NAM at 8 a.m. on Wednesday, and it looks really similar to what the HRRR shows. So I definitely think Eastern Kentucky, the I-64 corridor, most at risk for those storms as we get into overnight Tuesday and Wednesday. And then as we get into Wednesday, you'll see it has a complex of storms, especially in central and eastern Kentucky, early in the morning hours here on your Wednesday. So again, the timing is going to be a little bit wonky. Model data didn't even handle the complex that's currently in far eastern Kentucky well, so I don't expect it to handle a setup that's 2 days out well, but I definitely think an increase to shower and storm activity is coming as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday, and then possibly even your Thursday. As we fast forward here, here's the NAM at Wednesday at 11 p.m. and you'll see another complex of storms moving in from the same areas, from Indianapolis to Cincinnati to possibly even Louisville as we get into Wednesday evening and overnight on your overnight Wednesday, early Thursday morning. So I don't want to kind of bottle you guys up. I don't want to leave it put too much on you guys here, but here is the SPC outlook for today on your Monday, and you can see how that slight risk is centered across portions of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, where we do have those kind of train tracks that are laid for later today. The wind risk is going to be the most significant risk. You can see where we do have that 30% wind risk here in portions of Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania, and that is for that complex of storms that is currently moving in right now. So that's very interesting to see that. And then as we get into Tuesday, you'll see how everything kind of shifts a little bit farther south and a little bit farther west, kind of highlighting the I-75 corridor here. And I do think the I-75 corridor is going to be more at risk for storms as we get into our Tuesday compared to everywhere else. I definitely think from the I-75 corridor, kind of highlight that here, from the I-75 corridor points off to the east, I definitely think this corridor is the best chance. And then as we kind of get into this yellow, yeah, I think the yellow should work. As you kind of get into this yellow, I think you have a chance to see some storms as we get into Tuesday afternoon and Tuesday evening, but the best risk definitely looks to be over here in this kind of orange area. And again, this is as we get into Tuesday, so we'll have a repeated rounds of showers and storms as we get into next week, but I definitely think Tuesday and Wednesday are the days to watch here locally in Kentucky for severe weather. So I do have one more thing. I have to get it pulled up here because I forgot to include it on this graphics channel here. So just give me 1 second and we will get going. And if you guys did have any questions in the chat, please be sure to let me know. Again, it looks like we'll have that increase to showers and storms, especially as we get into our Tuesday. Let me take this off here and we'll look at the SPC outlook for Wednesday. They did keep that. We talked about they might upgrade for Wednesday, but they actually just did a broad marginal risk as we got into Wednesday. But I definitely think that we could see an upgrade to a slight risk, especially here across Kentucky as we get into your Wednesday. So I definitely think we have another storm threat on Thursday. But again, with this repeated rounds, a lot of rounds of showers and storms, I don't think that we need to take it one storm, one system at a time. So here's the last thing I'm going to do. We're going to kind of look at CSU real quick. This is a learning model that does really good with severe weather forecasts. I actually want to go on, no, we can stay right here. So here it is for today. You can kind of see the 4 boxes here. On the top left is your tornado risk as you get into later today, and that is kind of centered here. And I know it's a little bit smaller on the screen, so I'll kind of tell you guys where all the risks are highlighted at. But the tornado risk for today is kind of highlighted across Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. We don't have much of a hail risk, but you can see that 45% wind risk probably for another round of storms as we get into the afternoon and evening across Ohio today. So the CSU is very bullish on that risk today. And hold on 1 second. I'm going to go to the website so we can pop this up a little bit cleaner on the stream here. Let me make sure. Sometimes the website can be a little bit wonky. There we go. So here is that risk here, and this is actually the updated 12Z, so that's good. So here is that updated risk for today. Again, your wind risk is going to stay across the upper Ohio Valley, across Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio today. And then as we get into your Tuesday, you'll see how everything kind of shifts off a little bit farther south and a little bit farther west. The highest tornado threat is actually far southern Ohio on CSU, and it does graze the Cincinnati area as we get into Tuesday. But you'll see the wind risk is kind of centered from I-65 and the I-75 corridor. So I definitely think if you're in far western Kentucky, you're not going to see very many severe storms here in the next couple of days. But I think, again, the I-65 to I-75 corridor looks to be most highlighted as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday for severe storms. And here is the Wednesday outlook from the CSU, and you can see that broad 15% across most of Kentucky. Again, centered basically across central and eastern Kentucky as we get into our Wednesday. So a lot of rounds of showers and storms, and it's inevitable that model data is not going to handle this perfectly. So it's definitely a day where you kind of just want to take it one system at a time, or a week where you want to take it one system at a time. But even as we get into Thursday, you'll see CSU was still highlighting some severe risk as we got into Thursday later this week in Kentucky. So definitely an active weather pattern, but nothing that we're not accustomed to here this summer. I mean, we've had a very active severe weather pattern here in Kentucky, and that looks to continue here as we get through this week. So this would be a good time for any questions. I hope I did not confuse anybody here. We're going to look at the Kentucky Mesonet website real quick. Again, I'm going to look at our heat indices. We're going to look at our heat indices out here at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You'll see they're approaching 100 degrees out here far western Kentucky. That is the biggest story for today, is going to be the heat. We do have that small storm chance out here far eastern Kentucky, but everywhere else is going to stay dry. And then as we get into Tuesday afternoon and Tuesday evening, we'll have to watch to the north and kind of see if we can get any complexes of storms to kind of push down into Kentucky Tuesday afternoon. And then we'll have another complex on Wednesday and possibly another one on Thursday. So active weather pattern, especially as we get into the mid and end of this week. I don't think that the severe risk is overly that high here in Kentucky. Definitely higher further north in Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. But we could get a couple of severe storms as we get into the middle of the week. So that's why I decided to fire up this live video here, just to kind of let you guys know, give you guys an early heads up that we might have some rowdy storms kind of move into Kentucky as we get into later this week. So that is all I got for you guys. Again, the floor is open for you guys to leave any questions, comments, concerns that you have. An active weather week looks very likely this week. And I do think that Wednesday's probably our highest severe risk, but if Tuesday continues to speed up and trend a little bit farther west, I definitely think at least the I-75 corridor could see some severe storms as we get into Tuesday. I did want to look at radar real quick. Again, if you guys want to put any questions in the chat, right now is a really good time to do so. Again, when we look at radar, the only storm complex that I'm really worried about today is this complex out here in far southeastern Ohio and West Virginia. And this is moving off to the south and the east. So it could clip Pikeville and Paintsville, far southeast Kentucky, but I think everywhere else looks dry. And then I will have another video tomorrow kind of covering our risk on Tuesday. And I do think Tuesday it'll be a little bit farther west right now. I'm going to show one more map, this is for Tuesday. I definitely think I will just cover Kentucky here. But I think if you live in this red circle, you have a chance to see storms, that MCS complex, as we get into Tuesday afternoon and evening. I definitely think the higher risk is out here along Cincinnati, Lexington, Somerset, and points off to the east, so the I-75 corridor. But we could get a complex as far east or west as the I-65 corridor as we get into tomorrow evening. So conditions could change. They likely will change as we get into Wednesday. So just make sure you guys stay weather aware, have a way to receive warnings, especially as we get into the middle of the week. So luckily, we don't have to worry about any of that storm threat today, and that is a good thing. We can continue to enjoy this kind of quiet, humid pattern, but a quiet pattern here in Kentucky. So that's all I got for you guys. I really appreciate everybody coming in here. And again, we'll continue to have live updates as severe weather continues to look like it'll be likely as we get into later this week. So I hope everybody has a great day. Have a great week, and I hope everybody stays blessed. Thank you guys. Have a great day.